Artificial Frontier Artificial
Podcast.
Frontier
Artificial
Podcast.
Frontier Podcast.
Artificial Frontier
Artificial
Podcast.
Frontier
Artificial
Podcast.
Frontier Podcast.
Okay, so get ready, because today we're taking a deep dive into something pretty wild. We're talking about Nikola Tesla, but not just his inventions. This is about his connections to the FBI after his death.
And what's especially interesting is, well, you got all these rumors, right? The public hears FBI and Tesla, and they imagine all sorts of things.
Yeah, like secret files, hidden inventions, the works.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the reality, it's a bit more complicated than that.
All right, so for anyone who needs a quick refresher, Tesla, he's the genius behind AC power, the stuff that, powers our homes.
Right. But he didn't stop there. This is a guy who envisioned things like wireless power, maybe even some kind of death ray. I mean, talk about ahead of his time.
So he was kind of a big deal, and with inventions like that, it's no wonder people were curious about what happened to his research after he died. Which brings us to these FBI files, right?
Yeah, we're talking letters, memos, reports, the whole shebang. But there's this one thing that keeps popping up over and over again.
What's that?
Despite all the speculation, the FBI consistently denied having anything to do with Tesla's belongings immediately after his death back in 1943.
Okay, so where does the story actually begin then?
It all starts at the Hotel New Yorker. That's where Tesla died. Now remember, he was originally from Yugoslavia, although a naturalized U.S. citizen.
Right, and I'm guessing that becomes important later on.
Oh, absolutely. Because enter his nephew, Sava Kasanovic, who also happened to be the Yugoslavian ambassador.
Talk about a coincidence.
Right. And naturally, he wants to claim his uncle's possessions. But, and this is key, this is also the middle of World War II.
So everyone's on edge, worried about technology falling into the wrong hands.
Exactly. So that's where the Office of Alien Property comes in. They're part of the Department of Justice, and they stepped in, took control of Tesla's things. Imagine the tension of Tist. Brilliant inventor dies, government swoops in.
Wow. So what happened? Did they find anything?
Well, we actually have this account from a close friend of Tesla's, a guy named Kenneth Sweezy. He was there when they opened Tesla's hotel safe.
No way. What did he see?
He saw them empty it out, reseal it, only to have it reopened when the alien property custodian got there. The rumors at the time, they said Tesla had a working model of his death ray hidden in there.
You've got to be kidding me. So did they find a death ray or what?
Well, the files don't say anything about a death ray. But the Office of Alien Property did take a lot of Tesla's stuff. The FBI files, they mentioned 2 truckloads. 2 truckloads.
Okay, so 2 truckloads of stuff, and the FBI saying, nope, we don't have any of his papers.
And they stick to that story pretty consistently. Not involved in taking the stuff, don't have the papers. But, and this is the kicker, the FBI, they did investigate Tesla, especially after this biography came out, Prodigal Genius, written by John J. O'Neill, published in 1944.
Prodigal Genius, what was so special about that book?
Oh, that book, it really got people talking. It raised all these concerns about, could someone use Tesla's inventions to build weapons? Dangerous stuff. So the FBI, they had to make sure none of that tech helped the wrong side, even if they didn't have it themselves.
So it was like a game of keep away, even if they weren't holding the cards themselves.
Exactly. And this is where things get really interesting. Remember that biography, Prodigal Genius? Well, it claimed FBI agents were the ones who opened Tesla's safe.
Wait, didn't Sweezy say it was the Office of Alien Property?
You see? The plot thickens. The FBI's own files contradict that book. And that's when you start to wonder what's true, what's not, and who knew what. We've got missing papers, government agencies, a whole lot of suspicion.
Sounds like we're about to step into a spy thriller.
You could say that again. And it gets even more complicated because there are other people involved too, each with their own reasons for wanting Tesla's work. And it wasn't just curiosity. The stakes were incredibly high.
So it's like a game of high-stakes keep away with some of the most brilliant and potentially dangerous inventions in history up for grabs. Who else was trying to get their hands on Tesla's work besides the FBI?
Well, one of the key players was actually directly involved. Remember the Sava Kasanovic, Tesla's nephew, the Yugoslavian ambassador.
Yeah, we talked about him earlier. But what was his deal? Was he just trying to look out for his family? Or was there something more to it?
Well, those FBI files, they give us a pretty interesting picture. Remember how Kasanovic contacted the FBI like right away after Tesla died?
Yeah, January of 43, right?
That's the one. He wanted all the details about his uncle's estate, and he made sure to emphasize how valuable those inventions were. He even mentioned profiting from them.
So it's a mix of family duty and maybe a little bit of business opportunity. But I mean, with the war going on, I can't imagine the U.S. government was too thrilled about handing over potentially revolutionary technology, even to family.
Exactly. The FBI had to be very careful. They had to respect legal claims, of course, but they also couldn't just ignore national security. This was a time when any little bit of technological advantage could completely change the course of the war.
Yeah, it's a tough spot to be in, for sure. So what about those papers? Those truckloads of Tesla's things. Did they ever figure out what was in them? Did they find anything groundbreaking?
That's the question, isn't it? The files themselves don't actually say exactly what was in those papers, but there's this one memo from April 1950, 7 years after Tesla died.
Okay, so 7 years later, what does it say?
It talks about this group of experts, including some military personnel, who went through all of Tesla's stuff in detail.
Wow, so even after all that time, they were still taking Tesla's work seriously enough to bring in the big guns.
It really shows you how much intrigue there was surrounding Tesla and his inventions. They were worried about national security even years after his death. It wasn't just a routine check. It was like they were trying to get inside the mind of a genius.
It makes you wonder, what were they looking for? What did they think they might find? Some kind of super weapon? The secret to unlimited energy? Maybe even time travel? Okay, probably not time travel.
Probably not. But they did mention something interesting. They took photographs of everything, which makes you think they weren't just putting it all in a box and forgetting about it. They were trying to understand it, maybe even replicate Tesla's experiments.
Makes sense. So speaking of things that went missing, what about that Edison medal? Did the FBI ever find it?
Unfortunately, no. The files we have, they don't give us a definitive answer about the medal. But there is a letter from Kenneth Sweezy from June 1955. He was really determined to get the FBI involved in the search.
Sweezy, the biographer, the guy who saw them open the safe.
That's the one. He was frustrated that they hadn't found it, and he actually suggested the FBI could offer their, quote, expertise to help find it. It's almost like he thought the FBI had some secret, super-powered investigative tools or something.
Well, when you're dealing with government agencies and a missing medal that belonged to one of the greatest inventors ever, I guess a little bit of suspicion is understandable. But even with Sweezy's urging, it sounds like the FBI didn't budge.
Nope, they stuck to their guns. They insisted that a missing medal, it wasn't really their problem. And that's where the trail seems to go cold, at least as far as these FBI files go.
Man, what a story. We've got missing papers, government agencies, potential Cold War conspiracies, and the missing medal. It's like something out of a movie.
You said it. And it gets even more complicated when you realize that there were other people interested in Tesla's work, too.
Yeah.
And they all had their own reasons for wanting it. And we haven't even touched on the rumors about Tesla's most outlandish ideas, the ones that seem like science fiction.
This is true. Well, we're going to need a bigger conspiracy board to keep track of all of this. What else is out there? It's amazing how these files paint such a complicated picture, you know? The FBI, they're saying one thing publicly, but then their own records tell a different story.
It's a classic case of action speaking louder than words.
Yeah.
Right.
Totally. And it makes you wonder, what were they so worried about? Why all the secrecy if they weren't hiding something?
Well, you have to remember the context.
Mm-hmm.
The world was on edge World War II, the Cold War looming, and here you have Tesla, a man who seemed to operate decades ahead of everyone else.
I mean, think about it. Wireless power, global communication, even the idea of a weaponized energy beam. It's the kind of stuff that could shift the balance of power in an instant.
Exactly. And back then, nobody knew what was possible. So the FBI, they're looking at this and they're thinking, what if? What if Tesla's inventions could be used to create a weapon of unimaginable power?
And it's not like those fears were completely unfounded, right? I mean, we talked about that memo from Boyce Fitzgerald, the one where he claimed Tesla had a working model of his Teleforce weapon.
Oh, right. And the giant tower that could transmit power wirelessly or, potentially be used to fry entire cities. It sounds crazy, but Tesla, he had a way of turning crazy ideas into reality.
He did. Just look at the stuff he accomplished in his lifetime. So yeah, I can see why the FBI might have been a little bit cautious, to say the least.
Cautious and maybe even a little bit scared. Because if even half of what Fitzgerald claimed was true, then those papers were incredibly dangerous. And nobody knew for sure what was in them.
Except, well, maybe the Office of Alien Property. We still don't know exactly what they found in those 2 truckloads, do we?
No, we don't. The files we have, they don't go into that level of detail. But we do know that eventually Tesla's belongings ended up at the Nikola Tesla Museum in Belgrade.
So even if the FBI didn't have direct control, they knew where the papers were.
Which suggests a certain level of, well, if not trust, than at least understanding between the agencies. They were all playing on the same team, even if they had different roles.
It's like a shadowy game of chess, right? With inventions and information as the pieces.
A very apt analogy. And in this game, it seems the FBI's role was more about managing the board than making the moves. They responded to inquiries, kept an eye on things, and maybe even steered the narrative a bit.
They were the gatekeepers, making sure the right information, or maybe the lack of information, got out to the public.
Precisely. And, it's easy to criticize that kind of secrecy, but you have to remember the historical context. The world was a different place back then.
Very different. Well, I'd say this deep dive has been a wild ride. Missing papers, government agencies, Cold War paranoia, even a missing medal. It's been quite the adventure.
And I think it highlights something really important. Sometimes the most interesting stories are the ones with more questions than answers.
It's true. We might not have uncovered a massive conspiracy or found the blueprints to a death ray, but we've learned a lot about the mystery surrounding Tesla and the FBI. And maybe that's enough. Maybe the real treasure is the journey, not the destination.
And the knowledge that even in the age of information, there are still secrets waiting to be uncovered. Secrets that could change the world as we know it.
Secrets about brilliant minds like Nikola Tesla and the governments that tried to understand them.
And who knows, maybe someday, those missing pieces of the puzzle will be found.
Until then, we'll keep digging, keep questioning, and keep exploring the hidden corners of history.
Artificial Frontier Podcast. Artificial Frontier Podcast. Artificial Frontier Podcast.